Hi, in this lesson, topic 1.11, we're going to subtract unlike fractions and mixed numbers. We're going to look at one style of borrowing when we borrow from a whole number. And the first thing we need to do, though, is to make unlike fractions into like fractions. And we do this by finding a common denominator. We try our best to find the lowest common denominator, and then from there, we can look at subtracting our fractions with ease. So we're going to follow some simple steps when we look at subtracting unlike fractions. First of all, we're going to find the lowest common denominator of these two denominators, 6 and 8. When we look at these two fractions and these denominators, we can see that the lowest common denominator is 24. Now, if you choose a higher common denominator, that's no problem. It happens to all of us. What you'll do then is you'll have to reduce at the end. But once we find the lowest common denominator, we're going to change both the 6 and the 8 to make them out of 24. And what we do to the denominator, we're going to do to the numerator as well. So we're going to multiply the first fraction by 4, and we're going to multiply the second fraction by 3. And we can rewrite these fractions. 5 times 4 is 20 over 24, minus 3 times 3 is 9 over 24. Now we have that denominator, 20/4, and we subtract our numerators. 20 minus 9 is 11. For example 2, we have 15 and 5. So in this case, the lowest common denominator is already there. It's 15, so we only have to change the second fraction. So we're going to multiply 5 times 3 and do the same with our numerator. Then we're going to rewrite. So 12 over 15 minus 9 over 15 is equal to 3 over 15. Now we can see that our fraction is not in lowest terms, so we are going to reduce the fraction by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 3, giving us an answer of 1/5. For the do together, number 1, we have 5/6 minus 4/9. So we need to find the lowest common denominator of 6 and 9, and the LCD here is 18. So we're going to multiply the first fraction by 3 and the second fraction by 2. I'll write that below. That will give us 15 over 18 minus 8 over 18. So we will come to the result of 7/18 for number 1. For number 2, we see we have 4 and 12. Our lowest common denominator here is 12, so we only need to change the first fraction, multiplying by 3 to raise the terms of that fraction. So that will give us 9/12 minus 5/12 equals 4/12. And now we can see this fraction is not in lowest terms. Both of these numbers are divisible by 4, so we're going to reduce the fraction by 4, leaving us with the final answer of 1/3. In topic 1.11b, we're looking at whole number subtraction, where we take a fraction away from a whole number. So we have a visual here of having 2 pizzas and taking away 2/3. So we have 2 whole pizzas, and then what we do is divide each of these pizzas into thirds, and then we ate 2 pieces. So we're left with 1 whole pizza and 1/3. And what this visual shows us is that 2 pizzas is the same thing as 1 whole pizza and 3 pieces, 3/3. And that's what we need to understand when we're borrowing, that 1 and 3/3 is the same thing as 2. So for the examples, we're going to take a look at how to show it visually and also how to manipulate the numbers. So example number 1, we have 3 minus 2/3. So we are going to divide each of these pizzas, if you will, into thirds. And we're going to take away 2/3. So this time when I take away, I'm going to show those 2 pieces as being shaded. So we can see from the picture that we end up with 2 whole and 1/3 left over. So now we're going to take a look at how to borrow from a whole number. Because the denominator is out of 3, we're going to keep that in our mind when we create the fraction. So to borrow, we're going to take 1 away from the whole number, making that into 2, and then we're going to create a fraction that is equal to 1 where we can easily subtract from. And the denominator is out of 3, so we're going to make it into 3/3, because we know that 3/3 is equal to 1. So this is 2 3/3. It's like 2 plus 1 equals 3. So we're borrowing in order to create a mixed number that we can subtract from. Now we see that we have 2 3/3 minus 2/3. This is like 2 minus 0. So the answer, whole number, will be 2. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. So we come to the result without having to draw a picture, 2 1/3. For our second example, we have 4 minus 1 3/8. So this time our denominator is 8. So we're going to divide our figures into 8 equal parts. So I'm going to draw each of these into 8 equal parts as we have 4 whole. And then we're going to do some taking away. So we're going to take away 1 whole and 3/8. So we're going to take away 1, 2, 3 pieces. So that leaves us with 2 whole pizzas, if you will, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces out of 8. So we have the answer as 2 5/8. If we don't want to draw a picture, if the numbers get big, we can use borrowing. So we see that we have a whole number minus a mixed number, so we need to create a mixed number out of the whole number. So we're going to borrow from the 4, making a 3, and because the fraction is out of 8, it's going to become 8/8. That's 3 plus 1 whole equals 4. Now we can subtract our second mixed number. We can subtract our fractions first or our whole numbers first. Whichever way you go about it, you're going to end up with 2 5/8 when you borrow from that whole number. For example number 3, we have 6 1/3 minus 4. So we're going to divide these figures into 3 pieces. Notice that we have 7 figures because we have 6 whole and 1/3. So these 2 are gone. So there's my 1/3 there. And then we're going to take away 4. So we're going to take away 1, 2, 3, 4 are gone. So that leaves us with 2 whole and 1/3. Well, these ones are a little different. We didn't have to do anything to the 6 1/3 to take away 4 pieces. So when you have a mixed number subtracting a whole number, watch out for these ones. You don't need to borrow because you have everything you need to be able to subtract a whole number. For these ones, you just need to subtract your whole numbers from each other. And the fraction, it's like the fraction is subtracting nothing. So that just gets brought along. So when you have a mixed number minus a whole number, you don't need to borrow. When you have a whole number minus a mixed number, you do need to borrow to create a mixed number. So let's do some borrowing. We have 3 minus 5/6. 3 has to change into fraction form. So what we can do is borrow, making it a 2. And then we create the fraction we need. We make 6/6 so that we have a like fraction to subtract 5/6 from. Remember, it's like 2 minus nothing, so that is 2. 6 minus 5 for our numerator is 1/6. 2 1/6 is the result. For number 2, we have 4 minus a half. So we're going to borrow from the 4, becomes 3. And 2 halves, that equals 4. and then we subtract away the half. So this equals 3.5. And that one really makes sense, and even if you don't need to borrow, you can do this one pretty quickly. 4 minus a half is 3.5. For number 3, we have 6 minus 3 1/8. So we can't take a fraction away from a whole number like this. So we're going to borrow. This becomes 5 8/8. Now we can subtract everything. 5 minus 3 is 2, and 8 minus 1 is 7. 2 7/8. And then number 4, watch this one. We've got a mixed number first minus a whole number. You don't need to try to borrow here. All you need to do is subtract your whole numbers. 3 minus 2 is 1. And subtract your fractions. The second one, there is nothing there, so it's just 3/4. The result is 1 3/4. So now you're ready to give exercise 1.11 a try.